Before the turkey roasts and the table fills with family favorites, take a moment to imagine something extraordinary. What if every dish on that table, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing, the pie, began not in a store, but in your own soil? From pumpkins ripening on the vine to wheat waving in the summer wind, every Thanksgiving ingredient tells a story of patience, care, and connection. This is the harvest behind the holiday, the real ground truth of Thanksgiving dinner. The Thanksgiving meal has always been more than a feast. It's a celebration of work, of land, and of gratitude, a reminder that every bite once grew beneath the same autumn skies that draw us together each year. For most of us, that connection has grown faint. We buy canned pumpkin, dried herbs, sacks of potatoes, and bags of flour. All the quiet fruits of someone else's labor. But once, every element of this meal began at home. Families sowed, tended, harvested, and stored the very foods they later served in gratitude. In this video, we'll rediscover what it would take to grow that meal yourself, from the first shoots of spring to the preserved abundance of fall. Each plant in this traditional Thanksgiving spread carries its own challenges, rewards, and history. Together they form the living story of American agriculture. Stay with me until the end, where I'll share a recommendation for a trusted video on raising and processing your own turkey, the perfect companion to these homegrown crops. Whether you dream of true self-sufficiency or simply want to understand the roots of the foods we celebrate, this journey through the Thanksgiving garden will give you a new appreciation for every field, every seed, and every hand that feeds us. Pumpkins. Long before they were carved for Halloween or canned for pie, pumpkins were a cornerstone of the American harvest. Their vines sprawled across colonial gardens and frontier fields, producing fruit that could last through the coldest months without refrigeration or root cellars. When settlers and indigenous farmers shared early feasts, pumpkins were already on the table, a gift from the continent itself. For the modern gardener, the pumpkin's appeal hasn't changed. It asks for space, sunlight, and patience, little more. Start the seeds directly in warm soil after danger of frost has passed. Each hill of 2 or 3 seedlings becomes a living tangle of vines, wide leaves, and pale yellow blossoms that open with the morning sun. Bees are essential partners here, carrying pollen between male and female flowers to ensure a full, well-shaped fruit. Pumpkins are heavy feeders thriving in compost-rich soil. They prefer deep watering at the roots, not on the leaves, to prevent mildew. As the fruit matures, its rind deepens from green to glowing orange, and the stem begins to cork and toughen, a sign that the sugars have settled in. Harvest before the first hard frost, leaving a few inches of stem attached. Then, cure the pumpkins in a warm, dry spot for a week or 2. This step concentrates flavor and hardens the rind, making them capable of storing for months. For pie, look beyond the giant decorative types. The smaller pie or sugar varieties, such as New England pie or winter luxury, yield dense, sweet flesh perfect for puree. Their size makes them easier to handle in the kitchen and more dependable in the garden. A row of ripened pumpkins glinting in the low autumn sun is more than decoration. It's a reminder of endurance. From seed to harvest, every pumpkin holds the patience of summer and the promise of a feast yet to come. Sweet potatoes. Among all the crops that make their way to the Thanksgiving table, few embody comfort quite like the sweet potato. Baked, mashed, or crowned with toasted marshmallows, its golden flesh carries the warmth of the season itself. Yet beneath that sweetness lies one of the most reliable, generous plants a gardener can grow: Unlike the common white potato, which sprouts from a cool season tuber, the sweet potato is a warm weather vine. It doesn't grow from seed, but from slips, young shoots cut from mature roots and placed gently into moist soil once the ground has warmed. Each slip sends roots downward and vines outward, tracing lazy paths across the summer garden. Wherever those vines touch soil, they may form new tubers, hidden treasure waiting beneath the leaves. Sweet potatoes thrive in loose, sandy earth, where the soil can breathe and drain well. They ask for steady moisture, but resent standing water. Over-fertilizing with nitrogen can yield a jungle of vines and very few roots, so modest feeding and generous sunshine are the real keys. As autumn nears and the leaves begin to yellow, the crop is ready. Pull the vines aside, lift carefully with a fork, and unearth the smooth, rose-colored tubers. But the harvest isn't complete yet. Freshly dug sweet potatoes are full of starch and need time to cure. For 10 days or so, keep them warm and slightly humid, around 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, so that their skins toughen and their starches turn to sugar. A well-cured sweet potato can keep for half a year, its flavor deepening in storage until it's ready for the oven. Before grocery stores and shipping crates, families would store them under beds or in kitchen baskets, drawing from the pile all winter long. Even today, a basket of homegrown sweet potatoes feels like wealth, measured in nourishment rather than dollars. They remind us that patience and simple care can yield a sweetness no recipe can manufacture. White potatoes. The humble white potato has anchored American tables for centuries, and no Thanksgiving meal feels complete without it. Mashed smooth, whipped with butter, or roasted crisp at the edges, it's both comfort and sustenance. Long before modern varieties filled supermarket bins, families counted on a single root cellar shelf of potatoes to carry them through winter. Growing them begins not with seeds, but with pieces of last year's crop. Each seed potato bears several eyes that, when cut and dried, can start a new plant. They prefer cool, loose soil, the kind that crumbles between your fingers, and short days of early spring. Too much heat, and the plants grow tall and weak. Too much compacted earth, and the tubers twist and choke underground. Rows should be mounded into raised ridges or hills. As the stems stretch upward, gardeners pull soil around their bases, protecting the swelling potatoes from sunlight, which would turn them green and bitter. Through summer, the plants stand knee-high, covered in soft, white blossoms that hint at the harvest forming beneath. When the tops begin to yellow and fall, it's time to dig. Each hill gives up a small miracle, smooth, cool tubers that tumble from the soil. Handle them gently. Their skins are thin and easily bruised. To keep them through the winter, they must be cured, spread in a single layer in a dark, airy place for about 2 weeks. The skins toughen, small wounds heal, and the starches stabilize. Then they can rest for months in a cool basement or cellar, waiting for the cook's hand. A homegrown potato is different from any store-bought kind. Its flavor is earthy and full, a direct reflection of the soil that shaped it. For generations, these simple roots were a measure of a family's preparedness, a quiet insurance policy against hunger. And when the Thanksgiving table is set, the creamy mound of mashed potatoes at its center carries that same message still. Work, patience, and gratitude served warm. Green beans. Before they were layered into casseroles or sealed in cans, green beans were a fresh taste of summer preserved for the cold months ahead. Nearly every family garden once had a tidy row of them, some climbing tall poles, others forming neat, bushy rows, because they were dependable, prolific, and endlessly useful. On the Thanksgiving table, they bridged the memory of green summer with the hardiness of winter fare. Green beans are easy to love and easy to grow. They need only warm soil, steady moisture, and sunlight. Bush beans mature quickly, producing all at once, perfect for canning or freezing. Pole beans climb trellises and offer a slower, longer harvest, giving handfuls each week. Their blossoms attract bees, and their vines fill the air with the faint hum of life that marks a healthy garden. For best flavor, the pods should be harvested young, firm, but not yet swelling with full seeds. The more you pick, the more the plants will produce. Fresh from the vine, they snap cleanly in the hand and release a bright, grassy scent that no store-bought bean can match. Preserving them was once an annual ritual. Families would blanch and pack them into jars, sealing them for the winter pantry, or string them into garlands and hang them in the kitchen rafters to dry. The dried pods could later be stewed with onions or ham, the flavor deep and familiar. In places where gardens fed families year-round, green beans weren't a side dish. They were a promise that the next season's abundance was never far away. When the Thanksgiving meal arrives, the green beans may not take center stage, but they carry a quiet dignity. They connect the feast to the fields, the kitchen to the garden, and the present moment to generations who worked by hand, believing that every small harvest deserved to be celebrated. In their simplicity lies a reminder: gratitude doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's just a handful of green beans, gathered at the right time and shared. Corn for cornmeal. If there is one plant that shaped the American landscape, it is corn. Long before the first Thanksgiving, it was the foundation of countless harvests, a grain that fed nations and carried stories through centuries. On today's table, its legacy lives on in cornbread and stuffing, humble dishes that speak of hearth and field alike. To grow corn for cornmeal, choose field corn or dent corn, not the sugary ears meant for eating fresh. These varieties produce large, starchy kernels that dry into the golden grain that mills into meal. They need full sun, rich soil, and, most of all, space. Corn is wind-pollinated, so a single row will struggle. Plant in blocks 4 rows wide or more, allowing the tassels drifting pollen to reach every silk. Through summer, the stalks rise tall and stately, their leaves whispering in the wind. When the ears are full and the husks turn papery, the real patience begins. Leave the ears on the stalks to dry as long as weather allows, then bring them under cover to finish. A well-ventilated barn or shed works best. In humid regions, avoid closed containers. Trapped moisture breeds mold before the grain ever reaches the grinder. The goal is kernels that are hard, glossy, and too dry to dent with a fingernail. Once dry, shelling is done by hand or with a simple crank tool. The kernels can then be ground in a hand mill or sturdy blender, producing meal as coarse or fine as you wish. That meal, sifted and warmed in a skillet, becomes the heart of cornbread, a dish that carried settlers, farmers, and field hands through generations of lean seasons. Corn may be easy to take for granted, but when you grow and grind it yourself, its meaning changes. Each loaf of cornbread is a record of sunlight captured, storms endured, and steady labor rewarded. It is food that reminds us of what sustains not only the body, but the spirit of the harvest itself: wheat. Wheat is the quiet cornerstone of the Thanksgiving table. Hidden in every roll, pie crust, and stuffing crumb lies the story of a grass that shaped civilization itself. For most of history, families didn't buy flour. They grew it, cut it, and ground it by hand. To do so today is to trace that same ancient rhythm, feeling the weight of harvest that built entire cultures. Wheat prefers wide skies and cool seasons. In the northern and midwestern states, it is sown in fall as winter wheat, sprouting just enough to anchor itself before the frost. It rests beneath snow through the silent months, then wakes with the first warmth of spring. Each slender stalk thickens into a rippling field of green that turns, almost overnight, to gold. A modest plot can yield surprising abundance. A 10 by 10 foot patch, just a small corner of a yard, can produce enough grain for several loaves of bread if tended carefully. Broadcasting the seed by hand, lightly raking it in, and keeping the weeds at bay through early growth are the main tasks. By midsummer, the heads bow heavy with kernels, and the soft rustle of straw in the breeze signals readiness. Harvest means cutting the stalks close to the ground with a sickle or scythe and bundling them into sheaves to dry. When crisp, the grain must be threshed, beaten, or walked upon to free it from the husks, and then winnowed, letting the wind carry away the chaff. What remains is pure grain, small hard seeds that gleam like amber. Grinding can be done with a hand mill, stone grinder, or even a strong food processor. Fresh ground flour carries a warmth and aroma that store-bought versions rarely match. It reminds you that bread once came directly from labor, not from packaging. Growing wheat isn't quick or effortless, but it is deeply human work. Work that connects one season's patience to another's nourishment. To hold your own flour and know it came from your patch of earth is to feel the oldest kind of gratitude. Simple, sustaining, and true. Onions and celery. In almost every Thanksgiving kitchen, the scent of onions and celery simmering in butter marks the true beginning of the feast. Long before the turkey is carved or the pie is sliced, these two vegetables lay the foundation. The soft, savory hum beneath every stuffing, gravy, and soup. They rarely take the spotlight, yet without them, the meal would lose its heart. Onions are among humanity's oldest crops. Hardy, patient, and universal, they bridge seasons and climates. They can be started from seed, though many gardeners prefer to begin with sets, tiny, dormant bulbs planted in early spring. Onions grow slowly, sending up green leaves that feed the bulb beneath the soil. As summer matures, those greens begin to yellow and topple, signaling the bulb's readiness for harvest. To cure them, spread the onions in a single layer in a shaded, breezy place for several weeks. Their papery skins will tighten, sealing in moisture and flavor for long storage. A basket of cured onions hanging in a cool shed once meant security against the coming winter. Celery is a more demanding guest in the garden, but its flavor justifies the effort. It needs rich soil, steady moisture, and cool weather. A long, slow season of care. Young plants can be started indoors and transplanted when the chill of early spring softens. As they grow, gardeners once wrapped the stalks with paper or soil to blanch them, keeping them tender and pale. Fresh celery, when snapped, releases a crisp fragrance no store stock can match. In the kitchen, these two humble plants work in harmony. Alongside carrots, they form what chefs call the mirepoix, the aromatic base of countless dishes. Together, they flavor the bread stuffing, the gravies, and the soups that bring a Thanksgiving meal to life. Onions and celery remind us that not every harvest shouts for attention. Some whisper, steady and essential, in the background, the quiet laborers of the feast. They embody the truth that gratitude doesn't always grow in grand gestures, but often in the small, unseen work that makes everything else possible. Cranberries. No fruit is more inseparable from Thanksgiving than the cranberry. Its vivid red sauce, bright against the pale shades of turkey and potatoes, brings color, tartness, and memory to the meal. It's a flavor both wild and cultivated, one that speaks of cold air, clean water, and the endurance of northern landscapes. Cranberries are native to North America, thriving in places where few other crops will grow. Their home is the wet, acidic bogs of New England, the Great Lakes, and parts of the Pacific Northwest, land that's neither forest nor field, but a world in between. There, low evergreen vines sprawl across beds of peat and sand, producing small pink blossoms in spring and firm, glossy berries by early fall. Growing them at home is possible, but not easy. They need consistently moist, acidic soil, conditions that most gardens lack. Recreating a bog means building a contained bed, often lined and filled with sand or peat moss, watered often enough to keep it damp, but not flooded. The plants grow slowly, taking several years to fill a bed and reach full production. When harvest comes, the berries don't fall into your hands like apples or grapes. They cling tightly to the vine and must be picked carefully or raked loose. Commercial growers flood their bogs to float the berries for machine harvesting. A dramatic sight, but one that demands resources beyond the reach of most home gardeners. Still, small-scale cultivation can be rewarding. A few square feet can yield enough to make sauce, jam, or dried fruit for baking. For those far from cranberry country, there are alternatives that carry a similar spirit. The high-bush cranberry, actually a type of viburnum, produces bright red clusters that can be cooked into a tart, jewel-colored jelly. Lingonberries, native to northern Europe but hardy in the northern U.S., offer the same bold acidity in a more forgiving shrub. Whether wild or tended, cranberries remind us of how much of the Thanksgiving table comes from the margins, from land and labor often overlooked. That sharp ruby red bite on the plate is more than a condiment. It's a taste of wilderness, a bright thread connecting the feast to the cold, clean places that birthed it. Sage, thyme, and rosemary. Long before the ovens warm and the table is set, the scent of herbs fills the air. For many, it's that aroma: earthy sage, bright thyme, resinous rosemary, that truly says Thanksgiving. These three herbs link the garden to the kitchen more directly than any other crop. They turn bread cubes into stuffing, broth into comfort, and a house into home. Each of them thrives in modest soil and good sunlight, thriving where richer plants might falter. Sage grows in soft gray mounds, its leaves thick and slightly downy, holding the warmth of summer, even in autumn's chill. It prefers well-drained ground, resisting both frost and drought once established. Thyme, smaller and more delicate, threads its stems between stones and pathways, filling the air with a gentle spice when brushed by hand. Rosemary rises upright and pine-scented, a living reminder that some evergreens belong to the kitchen as much as to the woods. They can all be grown in pots or garden beds alike. A sunny window through winter keeps them close at hand, while outdoor plantings return year after year if protected from severe cold. Harvesting is simple: snip sprigs as needed, or gather whole branches before frost and hang them to dry in bundles. When stored in glass jars away from light, their flavors will hold until the next growing season. In the days before commercial seasonings, these herbs were among the most valued plants in any household. Families passed down cuttings just as they did recipes, keeping the same lines of sage and rosemary alive for generations. Their fragrance was memory itself, the scent of meals shared, work completed, and harvest celebrated. On Thanksgiving, when you crush a leaf of sage between your fingers or strip a rosemary sprig for the roasting pan, you're taking part in something far older than the holiday. You're touching the same leaves that once flavored the feasts of those who came before. In every breath of their perfume lies the continuity of gratitude: green, living, and eternal. Pecans. At the close of the Thanksgiving meal, the pecan pie often arrives as the final note. Rich, dark, and unmistakably Southern. But long before it was wrapped in pastry, in syrup, the pecan was a gift of the forest, prized by indigenous peoples and settlers alike for its flavor, nourishment, and ability to keep through the winter. Pecan trees belong to the hickory family, native to the river valleys and lowlands of the American South and Midwest. They are trees of time, not haste, slow to mature, but generous once grown. A single tree, decades old, can bear hundreds of pounds of nuts each season. Planting one is an act of patience and a legacy. It will not reward you quickly, but it will feed your children and theirs after them. For those who dream of cultivating their own, start with grafted varieties rather than seedlings. They bear sooner and produce more consistent nuts. Pecans thrive in deep, fertile soil with full sun and good airflow. They require both male and female flowers to set fruit, so two compatible varieties nearby ensure good pollination. Through spring and summer, the trees stand tall and graceful, their fine leaves flickering in the wind. By autumn, clusters of green husks split open to reveal the smooth, brown shells inside. Harvest means patience, too. The nuts are shaken or gathered after falling naturally, then dried for several weeks to concentrate their oils and flavor. Cracking them by hand is deliberate work, each shell giving way to the pale, intricate halves within. Those halves carry the scent of wood and warmth, ready for roasting, baking, or simply eating as they are. To plant a pecan tree is to take the long view of nourishment. It asks us to think beyond this season, beyond even this generation. And perhaps that is what makes it a fitting close to a Thanksgiving meal. A food that reminds us that gratitude isn't only for what we've harvested, but for what we choose to plant and leave behind. Winter squash, butternut, acorn, and beyond. Long before pumpkin pie became a symbol of Thanksgiving, the table was graced with winter squash, the quieter cousins of the pumpkin. Butternut, acorn, Hubbard, delicata, and kabocha each tell a slightly different story of the harvest. Their flavors range from sweet and nutty to deep and earthy, and their sturdy shells carry the sunshine of summer straight through to winter's coldest nights. These squashes trace their lineage to the same ancient crops once cultivated by indigenous farmers, who selected and saved the best seeds for flavor and keeping quality. Settlers later adopted them eagerly, learning that the fruits could rest for months in a cool pantry without spoiling. In an age before refrigeration, that kind of endurance meant survival. Planting winter squash follows the same rhythm as pumpkins. Seeds go directly into warm soil, 2 or 3 to a hill, spaced widely enough for vines to roam. The broad leaves shade the ground, conserving moisture and discouraging weeds. Bees carry pollen between the golden blossoms, ensuring well-formed fruit. As autumn approaches, the rinds harden, the stems dry, and their colors deepen. Tan for butternut, dark green for acorn, blue-gray for Hubbard. When harvested with a few inches of stem and cured in a warm, airy spot for a week or two, these fruits can store for half a year or more. Their flavor improves in storage as the starches slowly turn to sugar. In the kitchen, each variety brings its own character. Butternut for soups and purees, acorn for roasting, delicata for quick baking with the skin left on. They are as versatile as they are beautiful. On Thanksgiving Day, winter squash often stands quietly beside the showier dishes, but its presence reaches back centuries. It represents continuity, the steady gift of the land across generations. To slice into one and taste its sweetness is to remember that abundance doesn't always come in abundance's form. Sometimes it arrives sealed inside a thick rind, waiting patiently for the day we give thanks. Thanksgiving has always been more than a meal. It is a season of remembering, of tracing our food back to the soil, to the hands that tended it, and to the patience that turned seed into sustenance. When you grow the ingredients yourself, even a single one of them, the feast takes on a new meaning. You begin to see how much sunlight, rain, and time are gathered into every bite. Each crop we've explored, pumpkin and potato, corn and wheat, herbs and nuts, carries generations of skill behind it. To plant them is to take part in that long, human story of work and gratitude. And whether your harvest fills a cellar or only a basket, the act itself joins you to something larger, the enduring rhythm of land and table. As promised, if you'd like to take this a step further and see what it truly means to raise your own Thanksgiving turkey, you'll find the link to a trusted video on that topic in the card above and to the right. It's a thoughtful companion to everything we've covered here. If this journey through the harvest has given you a new appreciation for what the earth provides, I invite you to subscribe to Ground Truth Gardening. Each week, we dig deeper into the real, practical stories behind the plants that feed us, stories worth growing one seed at a time. Thank you for watching and for honoring the harvest with me.